Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 9th, 2020. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's a beautiful rainy day here in the neighborhood. I want to thank those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders for doing a marvelous job in trying to keep America safe. And maybe the rest of America should take it lead from the Ivy League in sports and what they're doing.
It's all fair in love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, Big C, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I'm pausing just like a lot of people are pausing, but I never want to pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline, Big C. They really are experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Charlton, our veterans are going through such a horrific time these days in society. As we think about, we lose some 22 veterans a day to suicide, Charlton, but also we're losing veterans on a daily basis to this COVID-19. We have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number that we give out, Charlton, trying to help that side of the ledger, this horrific disease of suicide, but also with this horrific disease of COVID-19 and the veterans that are falling by the wayside, and that the government needs to find more of a way to get the veterans some help. I know the administration is always stumping about what they do for the veterans, but it seems just like in COVID-19 is rising, the veteran suicide rate is rising since this administration has been in power. We do our daily effort, Charlton, in trying to get assistance for these great veterans that have served this country so admirably, and I want more people to be able to give out that National Suicide Hotline number.
More people are starting to do it, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can start getting your help there also. Very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV just like car dealerships do it. Sports teams are starting to do it, Big C. Watch real estate and TV work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities there. Also, one more thing on Valley Homes Weekly TV, about to expand into another market where there's about 3 million people in the viewership. So that's really exciting to announce. That's going to be coming up this fall. Hopefully COVID-19 won't get in the way of that. So, Big C, I said, let it rain, 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 rain. And you said, I think the Temptations sing that song. But maybe I got to start singing it from a different part of the country. I'm singing it for California, but you guys are getting it down south, Big C. Thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we get our moisture down here on a regular basis. Everything is green around here year-round. It seems like you have to figure out which day you can cut your grass because it's going to be raining the next day here all the time.
Yeah, it's like when you wash your car, you can be sure, hey, maybe that's what I should do. I'll go get my car washed, and that way I'm sure it will start raining. Ironically, as much as we love sports and we love everything that's going on I know we do the Big C Friday Night Lights. We've been doing that for the last couple of years, and I know there's talks about will schools open or not? Will Betsy DeVos and POTUS make people go back to school? And they can say what they want to say. I think smart parents, Big C, they'll rather listen to their own doctor. But would you believe in the state of Texas, the way we do Big C's Friday Night Lights, state of Texas is talking about, they either have already done it or they're talking about doing it within the next week. They're going to cancel the 2020 high school football season in the state of Texas. Some of the top programs in Texas, like North Shore, Allen High School of Texas, South Lake Carroll, Duncanville. Texas is the largest state, even though California, the most populated state. That tells you that it's really serious. You can't go to school if they're canceling the biggest activity in the state of Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, maybe some people have come to their senses in the administration there in Texas, understanding how rapid this disease is spreading now. I know Texas is one of the hottest states in the country. As a matter of fact, today, Charlton, they set a record for the number of COVID deaths in one day in the state of Texas, exceeding 116. That's a horrific number, Charlton, when we talk about the loss of human life. And they can no longer pass it off anymore, saying it's just the elderly and nursing homes, Charlton. This is affecting all age groups around the United States. And it goes to back to the theme that we've been talking for the past couple of months. Sports is not even important when it comes down to the factor of human life and the chance of costing someone their life for the enjoyment of someone to sit back and say, I watched the game or I went to a game last night.
Yep.
They understand now that the spread of COVID-19, not just only are you going to have the students in school, but you're going to have all that auxiliary of the family and friends and alumni coming to the stadiums and the arenas to watch these games that are going to put even more people in peril.
Yeah, and I know you always talk about. I think you still said you have a leather jacket. If it hasn't turned to dust yet, Big C, you still get a leather jacket. But this is big because this was announced not by somebody that's going to a game. It was announced by the Dallas school superintendent, and it was given down in the state of Texas. I think Dallas is the second largest city. I think Houston's larger than Dallas. But everything runs out of Dallas. They have their state championship games at Jerry Jones World at AT&T Stadium. So football is very popular across the country. High school football really is the heart and soul of Texas, between sold-out crowds and large stadiums that look like Division II college stadiums for a lot of them, Big C. It's a decision that affects not just Texas, but it's going to sweep all over the country. And to me, I've always said, what would I do if I were in that situation? I think any parent would go into a burning building to save their own child. But I doubt any parent would send their child into a burning building. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the sense of sensibility is starting to come to people now, Charlton, to understand that this pandemic is real. As many people have wanted to politicize it and say, I need to be reelected, and so just forget about the pandemic, it'll go away, you're just going to have to live with it. Think about how many of those people that we're not living with any longer in America, Charlton. Almost 135,000 deaths of American citizens that no one gets a chance to say, I love you, I'm thinking about you, or give them a hug anymore, Charlton, because this pandemic has been handled so poorly. And a lot of those people were elderly, Charlton, but now the children of America are starting to be put in peril because of this disease and the poor handling from our administration, recognizing that they really needed to get on top of this thing, and to have the president, the vice president, and the secretary of education coming out and saying that the CDC's, guidelines for reopening schools were too stringent, and it would cost too much. Yeah. And here, once again, we have our administration putting the cost on a life in America. He won't release his tax returns, but he's saying it's costing too much to open up the schools with certain guidelines that would present a better level of safety for kids. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've always make fun of Texas because I had a college roommate but from Texas, and just the things that he would do so he could play football. I'm like, why do you got so many needles in your bathroom, man? Hey, people do what they got to do, Big C. But it's not a shame, because I'm glad that they're starting to if they can look out for kids in Texas, Big C, where people, it's a different thing. It's more a culture down there, just on base what I've seen. If they can do it in Texas, then you know a lot of other states are following. Also, as we do the Big C Sports Friday Night Lights, state of California has also decided they're going to decide the fate of high school football, and that's the biggest state in the country, by July 20th. So I think that's coming up in about 11 days. And the last 3 national champions have come out of California, from Mater Dei of Santa Ana and St. John Bosco of Bellflower. They're about an hour away from each other in Los Angeles. Other schools, De La Salle and Central Fresno, they've all been part of championship teams. And California stretches from the Oregon border all the way down to the Mexico border, Big C. So there's over 1,000 schools that will be affected, not just football, but also basketball and volleyball too. But we'll know that in about 11 days, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, once again, you got to stop thinking about sports in the greater picture of all of this and start thinking about human life and thinking about those factors, Charlton. Sport only exists because you have human life.
Yeah.
But once you start losing human life for something that's non-essential in the world, it's just like when they said, business could be open where essential workers were required. Football is not an essential activity for people to get an education.
Yeah.
It's only an essential activity to make money, but not to get an education. And when we think about the youth of America, not just high school, Charlton, we're talking about the junior league, the Pop Warner, and those things of that nature.
Yeah.
Where, there's no controlling body. There's no national controlling body for what athletics do at the high school and junior and Pop Warner levels, Charlton. So it is incumbent upon the state, the school districts, as well as the governors and politicians in those states, to make that decision, because everybody else is not going to be that, salient about it.
No, they won't. And in fact, in the state of California, it's something called the CIF, which is the California Interscholastic Federation. They just finished a 3-day teleconference, Big C. They were on the phone, and they were discussing what to do with the school in the fall. And this is a lot of pressure has been put on people by Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump, saying they're going to take away funding if you don't go to school. I think the intelligent school districts, they're saying we're going to focus on health. They couldn't care less. POTUS will be out of office by November if people vote, especially when they're trying to tell your teachers that you got to go back and sit in a class when we won't even let people go to a restaurant, but you're going to put 2,000 and 3,000 kids together in a high school. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think of the stupidity of POTUS when he says he's going to take away the funding from education. You think about he's already reduced the funding for special education.
Really?
In America. And I know there's millions of parents around in America with a special needs child. I had a son who was ADHD, and so that special education part of the curriculum in the school was very important for me and his development, Charlton, because you think about everybody doesn't have a child that's 100% healthy.
Yeah.
And for those of us who've had children with special needs, that really hurts to the core, because you are a part of a fraternity, Charlton, that is forever, because that child will always be dependent on things that you can provide for them throughout life. And here's the president that has been, defunding special education in school. He's talking about not defunding the police.
Wow.
And there's no way you're going to defund the police in America. You can reduce some of the budgets, but you can't defund the police. But here's the president cares so little about American society that he funded half of special education in the United States. I
was not aware of that. That's pretty sad. I mean, that's really sad that it just doesn't make any sense. But I guess a lot of things don't make sense. Something else that doesn't make sense, I know that everybody has their own thoughts. I think a lot of the NBA players are they should be in Florida by today or by tomorrow. I don't really know if they've heard about King James and that has gone down there or not. But I want to dribble over to the WNBA. And again, Laura Ingraham, it's amazing how we can talk about somebody and they're on a national news network the next day. WNBA Atlanta Dream, and they're named the Dream after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream speech, Big C. But the co-owner, Kelly Loeffler, last night was dealing with Laura Ingraham, and she said that she would not step down as co-owner or sell her interest in a team that has, I guess, about 80% of the athletes on her team. She doesn't believe in standing hand in hand with them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the Atlanta Dream, Charlton, all 5 starters on that team are Negro. They're African-American women, Charlton. And here's an owner saying that anything that's pertaining to Black Lives Matter is denigrating to the flag of America. She does not believe in Black Lives Matter. And this is a woman that lives in the South and is co-owner of a team that is predominantly African-American Negro women, Charlton. So this is where society stands in America.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like the president sent out a tweet this morning because Mayor Bill de Blasio in New York, he went out along with others and painted Black Lives Matter in bold yellow letters, Charlton, on Fifth Avenue in New York in front of Trump Plaza. Trump sent out a tweet talking about this was devaluing the property in New York because Black Lives Matter it runs down property value. And this is
Wow.
how insensitive Kelly Loeffler, as well as the president, is towards the plight of society in America. They want people to go out and sacrifice their lives so that they can make money, Charlton, and they're not concerned about the ongoing struggles of society that we don't have equality in America. They believe in the way that the Constitution was written. And the Constitution was written for people that look like them, Charlton, that had that skin complexion, that had that racial epithet about them. It was not meant for equality in America, and that's the reason why he keeps going back to Make America Great Again. Make America what it was from the Founding Fathers is Trump's bugle call. And when we know what society represented at that point, is that the African Americans, the blacks, the Negroes weren't going to get a fair share, and that's the way he's been trying to keep it and drive for since he's been in administration.
Well, I guess that's pretty close to the same apartment that he wouldn't rent to African Americans. He was actually sued by the Justice Department of the United States of America. Sued by the Justice Department because he would not rent buildings to African Americans. Isn't that amazing? He got sued. If you get sued by the Justice Department, isn't that bigger than your neighbor suing you? Big, see your thoughts?
Yeah, but Charlton, he owns the Justice Department now, and he's been able to overturn all those things that was done to him before quietly because defer and deflect. You'd be amazed at the things that he does behind the scene. Whenever he makes a public spectacle, that means he has something going on that's affecting millions of Americans, Charlton, but not in their favor, in his favor.
Well, I really appreciate New York Mayor Bill de Blasio as he participated in that statement. That it's a statement that if you can't even get behind the statement, then that just shows you not everybody's proud to support everybody. Not everybody wants liberty and justice for all. I do want to touch on something that happened because I know we're talking so much about sports and will teams play. I think there are a lot of people, as we say, you would never put your child or send your child into a burning house, but you would go into a burning house to get your child. Now, Major League Soccer, Nashville, they've withdrawn from the tournament down in Orlando. They've had 9 players test positive for COVID-19, as some NBA players don't read that because they're going in as other people are going out. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about it, Nashville is the second team to withdraw from the tournament down in Orlando. Ironically, Charlton, this is the same facility that is to be housing NBA teams.
Yeah.
Dallas was the first team to withdraw. Dallas had 10 positive tests on their team. Orlando withdrew last night. They had 9 positive tests. And this is one of the things I talked about, Charlton, that so many NBA players didn't spend enough time going to college.
Yeah.
They want to be one and done or straight out of high school into the NBA. Is that I don't know if any of them learned math while they were in high school.
Or science.
But when you look at this, Charlton, it's absorbed a number of soccer players. Now, if you look at soccer is more of a socially distant sport than the NBA is, Charlton, because you have distance when you're out there on the field. It's the same size as a football field, and you only have 6 players out there.
Yep.
Here it is with the NBA where you're body to body for, the 48 minutes of the contest. There's no way that you can practice social distancing. You're breathing, you're sweating on each other, Charlton. You're touching, it's nothing but physical contact.
Yeah.
And here it is, soccer just arrived, and they've had 20 players from 2 teams test positive. They could not field teams, Charlton, so they went back home. And here's the NBA saying that we're going to chance it. We're going to do exactly what Laura Ingraham from Fox did. Shut up and dribble.
Shut up and dribble, Big C. Shut up! And she didn't say shut up and dribble. She said shut up and dribble, and now they're giving her a trophy because now, of all people, they're having people who run sports teams come on her program because they've run out of the content to talk about on just sticking to politics. But ironically, as the NBA teams, they finally start to practice in Orlando in what's called the infamous bubble, where a lot of soccer teams are saying, there's a lot of mosquitoes in that bubble, Big C. They don't want to go into the bubble full of mosquitoes, invisible mosquitoes, but they'll put the African-American players in there. So this is my thoughts. Every single player, they have to test negative on 2 separate COVID-19 tests in the first 36 to 48 hours upon arrival. They're allowed to practice as a team. The players will be offered some type of ring to monitor their health. And then teams that are staying in Disney hotel properties and were assigned hotels based on their position in the standings, apparently this is what the meals look like when the players are going to get quarantined. They even have a restaurant. I would have thought, maybe this is my own thought, they would have more diversity in the restaurants that are allowed to give food to the NBA players. But I think it's not. But that's another thing that maybe I'm arguing about. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you would think that you'd have some high-end chefs hanging around the facility to cook for the players, but, you know, there's no way to keep all these players 100% safe, Charlton, because you got to understand, to bring the product in for the players to eat, somebody has to handle that.
That's right.
On a couple different occasions. I mean, when you think about the food suppliers, Charlton, whether it's the meat, whether it's the produce, whether it's the drinks, you have outside entities handling this food. So exposure to the coronavirus is evident. And Florida is one of the top 5 states right now in the United States, Charlton, spiking for COVID-19. Not spiking, but just running. It's not a spike. It's a wildfire.
Yeah.
It's in Texas as well as Florida and California. So it's inevitable that several of these players are going to end up with COVID within the next week. It's just a matter of how many ends up on a team. And I'm curious what they're going to do when it hits the superstars, Charlton, because those are the ones that are going to get it. And when the superstars, the name brand players in the NBA can't participate in this tournament, what is the NBA going to do at that point?
I think they're going to start it, and then they're going to stop it. But I want to ask, and we don't know, everybody has their own opinion, but I do remember, I believe it was the ESPYs several years ago. I think it was LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony. I believe there was Dwayne Wade, and I forget the other couple of guys that had the Black Lives Matter T-shirt on. And I don't know LeBron. LeBron's made himself almost $1 billion, Big C. $1 billion. I'm sure he couldn't make it if he doesn't go down into the bubble and put his family in jeopardy. What goes into the mindset? And again, we don't know his thoughts. We don't know. We can't speak for him. But in your mind, what would you say to LeBron? You're a billionaire, and you're going to go into a bubble where other teams are leaving, and you right now you really are the face of the NBA, and you're the new Michael Jordan of the NBA right now. You're the new Bill Russell. And he's going down there as if he doesn't have $1 billion. What would you say to him? I don't understand why, but your thoughts on what would you say to him, Big C, your thoughts?
You know, the reason why these guys are going down there is ego-driven, Charlton. It's all about the opportunity to win a championship, and your opportunities get less and less the more years that you spend in the league. But it's not just LeBron. Look at the top players across the flight of the league. If you look at Kawhi Leonard, you look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, you look at Joel Embiid, you look at the superstars from around the league, Charlton, and say, what is the reasoning for this? Only one team will win a championship if this thing plays through.
Right.
But look how many players that you're potentially putting in peril, not only just the player, but their family. Look at all the people that you're putting in peril that potentially can be damaged. And you have to understand that you have internal problems when you get COVID-19. Just because you beat the virus, your body doesn't let it go. It lingers within your body, Charlton, where you have physical ailments that will last for years, and they really don't know how long this stuff is going to last within the individual body. It affects everybody in different ways.
Yeah.
And you think about an athlete, the number one thing that COVID-19 affects is your lung capacity. And there's not an athlete out there that can survive in a sport without having maximum lung capacity. We see players all the time working on their conditioning.
Yeah.
And so once it strikes these players, Charlton, that lung capacity will be diminished.
Yeah, and I know, and you know. So, we have a right to do whatever we want to do within the law in this country, but I'm just ashamed that many of our African-American young men, nouveau riche men, that have become multi-millionaires have just put science on the back burner. I want to jump down because it's something I really want to talk to you about in the second half, Big C. But I want to go to the NCAA. We were just talking about this yesterday, where there was Stanford 11 programs, the Ivy League. They shut down some things. Other programs are doing it too. So the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, they're doing the Big C pause on all sports until at least September 1st, because they're still trying to see, will there be some type of, whatever they're looking for, cure, Band-Aid, whatever. But they put the pause on just a day after Stanford and the Ivy League did it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Stanford when they put a pause on those 11 sports, Charles. You realize that those 11 sports that they canceled for the fall, Charlton, there were 23 Olympic medalists that participated in those 11 sports from Stanford.
Yeah.
But this also, the bigger picture of all this in these universities canceling these sports other than football, Charlton, it shows that the amount of revenue that it takes to run these sports, and without football, they can't play these sports. So, the fight has been for years, Charlton, for athletes to get paid at these universities. So they should look at the budgeting that they're talking about that they're going to save by canceling these sports and not playing them in the fall, Charlton, and disperse that money amongst these revenue athletes, the football players, the basketball players that generate all this revenue for the universities, because it shows how they've ripped off these athletes for decades in funding other sports where these athletes got nothing in return.
Yes, it's one thing to rip off players, and you know how you can rip people off and they don't know about it. And then not only do they not know about it, after they rip them off, they want to put them into a bubble or even into a perilous environment where they just don't know. The science is saying no, but people say, no, I want to go swimming anyway. I know you're down in the South where they say the hurricanes come in sometime, and they actually tell people to evacuate town, and they don't say evacuate forever. They're just saying evacuate town until the hurricane comes in, does what it does, and when the waters recede, you can go back and try to rebuild what you lost. I mean, that's happened on the East Coast. It's happened down south, Texas, Florida. It's happened in a lot of places, Louisiana. And it's just weird that with the COVID, as the season started, I think it was back around March 11th or 12th, they stopped everything, Rudy Gobert. And now they only had a couple of cases in. Now it seems like every day people are testing positive, and they're going back in. That would be like going back to your home when the hurricane is rising, not when it left town. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the whole thing since this COVID-19 has been put at a pandemic stage in the United States, Charlton, all we've heard is people talk about money, the loss of money.
Yeah.
We haven't heard people talking about the loss of life. You think about it, we're up on 135,000 American lives that have been lost.
Wow.
You realize in the Vietnam War that lasted from 1955 realistically to 1975, we lost 58,000 lives in that time span, Charlton, over a 30-year time span or 20-year time span. We lost 58,000 lives.
Yeah.
In a matter of 4 months in America, we've lost over 130,000 lives. And no one is wanting to take this thing as being serious. They keep talking about economics. We got to get this economy reopened. The economy runs on lives, Charlton.
Yeah. So
if you're losing lives constantly, how can you say you get the economy restarted? Yet again today, Charlton, last week, another, 1,350,000 people applied for unemployment insurance again. So as you keep talking about and waving your flag, talking about the economy is getting restarted, people are going back to work, it's ironic that you're still getting over 1 million people every week applying for unemployment. That means jobs are going away, Charlton, and in jobs are going away, and we're losing American lives at the same time. I mean, we need to sit down and have a conversation about senility.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to have the conversation about Black Lives Matter in America, and no one wants to talk about it because they keep saying it's a difficult subject. It's been a difficult subject for 400 years.
Yeah.
So in 400 years, no one has been able to get up the courage to have the dialogue about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And every time we go through one of these incidents within a news cycle, every 10 years, every 5 to 10 years, it seems that we go through this pain stretch in America where we're trying to get a seat at the table to have a conversation, and it's always the time is not right. Once again, the time is not right. The time is not right. Well, we got to play sports.
Yeah.
If we play sports, then we can take the focus off of Black Lives Matter. We can take the focus off unemployment. We can take the focus off deaths in America. All of that is wrong. We're doing it all in reverse, Charles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all, sometimes you got to drive backwards, Big C. When the flood's coming up, if you drive backwards, maybe you can get out of it and you won't get stuck in them. But we're going to talk a little bit more about some things that other people are talking about. I hate talking about things that I don't have a lot of knowledge of, but sometimes you got to put 2 feet in the water, Big C. When you put 2 feet in the water, sometimes you end up swimming. We'll take the Big C pause, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on, say, Google or Alexa. Play Big C Sports Podcast from anywhere in the world, and you'll hear our show, and I really appreciate that. There's a man, you know, I know NBA is going to do its thing. People do what they do what they want to do. I don't think they're dragging anybody down into the bubble. But NBA basketball superstar coach, also Olympic champion coach, San Antonio Spurs, Coach Greg Popovich, who may be moving to the East Coast soon, called NFL owners, and I'm sure some NBA owners also, that give money to POTUS, hypocrites. He called it Black Lives Matter. POTUS called Black Lives Matter a terrorist group and supports Confederate flags and statues and tells Americans, fire the SOBs. And then he says, don't wear a mask, as COVID-19 has been spiking, yet there are a lot of owners that have given money to POTUS anyway. The same man that seems to have antipathy for African Americans. We know the Justice League sued him in 1973 for not renting buildings to African Americans. But this is a white man taking on other white men. If black men insult white men, sometimes they say, oh, you guys are being unfair. But when Coach Popovich takes a shot at Robert Kraft and other NFL owners, and some NBA guys too, who donate to the Trump campaign, they can put their money where they want to put their money, Big C. But I think he's so right. He's so right. And oftentimes, when people say they believe in Black Lives Matter, and some guys don't, like Jerry Jones doesn't take a stand, and there's a reason he won't take a stand, because they really don't believe in it. But I want to ask you, there's 7 NFL owners that gave money to the POTUS campaign, and we were having a little bit of, I was talking about driving backwards in the thunderstorm, Big C, and next thing you know, sometimes a thunderstorm hits the phone line and they can go out too, but it's all fair and love and war. I'm asking for $100 million, God. You can make that happen too, since things we talk about come true. But Coach Pop got on some NFL owners, some NBA guys too. There were 7 NFL owners that donated at least $1 million to the Trump's inaugural committee, according to the New York Times. And some of those owners, New England Patriots owner Rob Kraft, Dallas Cowboys. Why is it Jerry so quiet? How come Jerry won't say Black Lives Matter? Jerry Jones, Washington Redskins, or Washington to be continued, whatever their name's going to be. Daniel Snyder, Los Angeles Rams owner Stan Kroenke, New York Jets owner Woody Johnson, Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, and now deceased Houston Texans owner Robert McNair. And this is Coach Popovich, a white man, saying it's just hypocritical and it's incongruent. It does not make sense. People are not blind. Do you go to your staff and your players and talk about injustices and democracy and how to protest, and then you still don't get it? And there's a reason when people say the owners got to come out and talk about it, Big C, there's a reason they won't, because they support POTUS. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, don't think it's just NFL owners, Charlton. There are NBA owners, Major League Baseball owners, WNBA owners, MSL soccer owners, Charlton, that have all donated to POTUS's campaign. So, I mean, there's hypocrites in every sport.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it wasn't, then you'd have all these owners speaking up unilaterally against what the president stands for, Charlton, but you're not getting that. These owners speak up for each other, and that's what silence has spoken volumes. You got all these professional leagues in America, Charlton.
Yep.
In which league have you heard owners stand up against the president's rhetoric from?
None.
None of them. So they're all in cahoots and in bed with each other when realistically you look at it. Silence speaks 1,000 words when it talks about bashing somebody.
Yeah, only Mark Cuban. I want to go back and I say I've heard Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He's the only one that's come out and spoken up because he's a decent man. But a lot of guys, they're hiding. What do you say? Something about a mouse that hides with cotton? Something about mouses that hide sleeping on cotton? What is it, Big C?
Well, it's like why is a mouse urinating on cotton in a church?
It's amazing they even sleep in the cotton that they urinate in, but mouses don't have a brain, as far as I know, much bigger than a peanut. But it's all fair and love and war. But when Coach Pop comes out and says that, and I know down in the bubble, the NBA, they want to put Black Lives Matters on the court, and it's just ironic that they just have this thing where they just want to play. They want a ring. As you mentioned the other day, only one team's going to get a ring, Big C. I mean, it's only going to be one ring, no matter how many 22 teams show up down there to do that thing. But I want to touch on something, and I don't know the whole situation behind it, but I know the media's been on LaShawn Jackson. He said some stupid things. Who hasn't said some stupid things in life? But I also, when you hear about Coach Pop, who called out some owners of the NFL and NBA, and a lot of these people have given money to a man that had the belief that you can't not take down Confederate statues or flags. He slammed NASCAR for trying to be decent with the Black Lives Matter and Bubba Wallace. And we know that POTUS had the lawsuit against black Americans. Also, Facebook took down the swastika on POTUS books on his Facebook page. He did. I mean, that just happened within the last 20 days, Big C. But no one's calling out some of these owners the way they call out LaShawn Jackson for something that he said something stupid. I don't know the whole thing. But why not go to some of these owners who also give money to a man who actually had a swastika on his Facebook page? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the situation with LaShawn Jackson, he made an anti-Semitic remark, Charlton, against the Jewish culture. Now, and the Eagles came out and reprimanded for him. I recall back, I believe it was about 2013, when they had a wide receiver
Lincoln
named
Riley
Cooper.
Riley Cooper,
who
yeah.
made a statement, Charlton, a verbal statement on a record. He said, I'll jump over the fence and beat up all those Negroes in a derogatory term. So,
Yeah.
And he stated that, but the Eagles, there was no backlash from the Eagles organization against Riley Cooper. You know, what amazes me, and I know the Jewish culture has gone through an horrific time from World War II, Charlton, and what happened to that culture, which was, the world allowed to happen. Even
Turned
the
its
U.S.
back.
allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
But also, as we look at the horrific ordeals that have been going on against the Negro culture in America, Charlton, for 400 years, that the U.S. has implemented and still allowed to occur, and the injustices that go towards one race in this country that seems to get the less of all cultures in America. I understand words hurt people when people say them and they take them out of context, or they even say them out of context.
Yeah.
Context. But look at what the Negro culture has been suffering through for 400 years in America and continues to suffer through for 400 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the burning down of Black Wall Street in America, on American soil, not across the ocean, Charlton.
Yeah.
In this country, we've had over 5,000 Negroes lynched in this country at the hands of white people, Charlton, in America. And there's been no restitution, no apologies, or anything to the Negro culture. But if the Negro culture says something negative, then they're obliged to apologize for saying something negative, even with what goes on a daily basis still in 2020 against the Negro culture.
Yeah, and I've always thought, what Jackson said was dumb. But last I checked, he did not give $1 million to a man that had a swastika taken off of his Facebook page. That's Donald Trump. And the media has access to him, and they have access to all the owners that gave him over $1 million. And they gave a man $1 million, and he had the swastika on his Facebook page, and makes it a $10,000 fine to desecrate a Confederate statue, which is to keep rubbing slavery in the face of people. And they've said nothing about it. So they're jumping on Jackson, who said something stupid, but they won't jump on some of these owners that make a stupid man even more powerful by giving money to him. That's just my opinion. But as I want to, man, our show goes by too fast. But I appreciate Coach Popovich for bringing that up. And it just reminds me, Big C, when you brought up that thing about ownership, like you'd rather own a house than rent a house. You rather own a car than rent a car. You rather own whatever it is, you rather own your business as opposed to working for somebody who could always come in and say, you're fired. As POTUS, I believe he's not going to be allowed to hide his tax returns, even though they'll fight that in the court. But that happened today. But NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, he said there would be no NFL without black players. You know, the ones that POTUS calls the SOBs, and there were several owners that gave him over $1 million for his campaign for saying fire the SOBs. And Roger Goodell says there would be no NFL without black players. NFL made about $15 billion last year. Accordingly to their post, I'm sure they may have made more. Black players created about $10.5 billion of that, of the $15 billion. As a group, with factoring and banking, they were collectively about $105 billion, Big C. The SOBs would be worth $105 billion. Yet they still work for owners who will not say Black Lives Matter. They will give money over $1 million to a man that says Black Lives don't matter. And they keep giving POTUS money after calling them every derogatory name you could. So if I ask you this thought, and I've really been thinking about it, Dana White owns the UFC. He's not begging the NFL owners for work. He's not begging the NFL owners for any type of, what type of manager you're going to have with the UFC. He has the autonomy. So what is it about Dana White as one person that you have about 1,500 African Americans, I won't say 1,500, maybe 1,300 African Americans that make up the NFL? What does he know that they could learn from? If that makes sense to you, Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it's what any salient person knows that anybody can learn from. You have power. And I keep talking about this with the Negro athletes, Charlton. This is the one time in American society that they hold all the cards in the deck, Charlton. When you look at the collegiate and professional Negroes that are out there, they hold all the cards in the deck where they can change the landscape if they sit down. You think about the summit that the Negro athletes had in 1967 in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Well, when you had Jim Brown, you had Lou Alcindor, you had Bill Russell, you had Muhammad Ali, you had so many other, Bill Mitchell. Negro prominent athletes, Charlton, talking about economics. They weren't talking about sports. They were talking about economics. And there's still a couple of members alive that were at that summit. Lou Alcindor, who was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Jim Brown. There's a couple others that are still alive, Charlton. Yeah. But they need to get together with those gentlemen, those elderly black gentlemen that possess the knowledge of economics to see the power that they had. That was the most fearful point that professional athletics ever had in America from black athletes, Negro athletes, Charlton, because they sit down and they started discussing social economics. And here are athletes now that should be more clairvoyant than those gentlemen were of that era because they've had an opportunity to obtain a lot more. But the one thing the athlete of today, Charlton, doesn't have that those guys had degrees from university because they had to spend 4 years in college.
Yeah.
So they learned a lot while they were in college. We don't get that from all of the athletes today.
Yeah.
So if they could take a page from those gentlemen, Charlton, and sit down and talk to them, ask them to come in and hold a summit for them, to give them direction, because most of these professional athletes we have, they came out very young, Charlton. They were given a lot of money, but not a lot of direction.
Yeah. And
so they really don't understand where they need to be. But we need to have an economic summit of Negro athletes once again here in America, Charlton, to show the power that they possess and bring in those elder statements, Negro athletes, former athletes, Charlton, to give them some direction on what they can accomplish.
Yeah, because they've tried it. They've tried it before, and it's just like right there, right in front of your face. It's almost like a dog. If you don't feed your dog, it'll go to your neighbor's house sniffing around. They'll go sniffing around your neighbor's property, Big. If your neighbors don't feed the dog, it'll come to your house sniffing around, and even using the restroom on your trees. So sometimes you gotta sniff around and ask people like Dana White, like how did you create what you created? He's one man, and he's able to do it. Before we close, Big C, NFL news also, because of what's happening with just trying to be inclusive. And I appreciate it when people can make a mistake and say, you know what, I said something stupid, I apologize. And people say, yeah, but what did you really mean? I told you I apologize. That's what I meant. Yeah, but you meant something else. No, if I say I apologize, I apologize. But people want to beat people up over that. NFL news, Julian Edelman and Deshaun Jackson, they're going to visit the Holocaust and the African American Museum to listen and learn about the history of both cultures, Big C. And that means something. That's major news. I would see if major news would cover that too, because I think they can learn something. At the same time, take some of those owners that want to learn about racial sensitivity and take them to the museums also. And I know POTUS would never go, but Element came out of Woodside High School in Northern California, the Bay Area. LaShawn Jackson came out of Long Beach Poly High School in Southern California. So I'm hoping that they can do some good things to make things a lot better. But again, why is it players being responsible? The owners should get together and go to the Museum of African American History, especially the ones that don't want to say Black Lives Matter, Big C. That makes sense to you? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I look at it from this perspective. The Jewish, hardship has always been a part of the history books in America, the Holocaust and all of that. They taught American society about the Holocaust. They did not teach American society about slavery in America, Charlton. They did not teach America the atrocities that blacks and Negroes have gone through throughout the history of America, Charlton. That got one page in the history books, Charlton.
Yeah.
And I'm not being, unsympathetic to the plight of the Jewish community and the atrocities of World War II. But we lived through atrocities for 400 years in this country. And there's no history book dedicated to that, Charlton. There's always a little slither. You didn't even learn about it while you were in grammar school or high school, about the atrocities of slavery. There was always one page in the history book, then all of a sudden they just leapfrog into modern day.
Yeah.
That, everything was fine with these people. There was no talk of the lynching of African-American Negro people in America, Charlton. It wasn't that. It wasn't talked about the rape and the pillaging that they did of the culture of Negroes in America.
Yeah,
how
that's
they
true.
took land and cities away from Negroes in America, Charlton. We suffered as much as the Jewish people have. Maybe not to the totality of numbers, Charlton, but we have suffered just as much. But we have suffered at the hands of our oppressors, and then they want to say that we understand your plight in this country, yet they kept a foot on our throats for 400 years in this country.
Yeah, Jewish Holocaust lasted 1941 to 1945. Slavery lasted 1619 to 1865. Anyone can do the math.
2020, Jonathan. 2020. Slavery still exists in America. Don't ever think that you've got from underneath that shroud of slavery, because if you had them, then you'd have equality in America, Charlton. You wouldn't be hearing that Black Lives Matter in America, Charlton. You wouldn't be hearing about redlining in America, Charlton. You wouldn't hear about equal pay for equal time, Charlton, in America. If you think that slavery is ended, walk out there and say, I want to be treated like the white guy, and see how you get treated.
Well, based on the law, they did sign the 13th Amendment. No one can say that did not happen. Does it mean everything's fair?
There's been a whole lot of laws in America forever, Charlton. Homicide is a law, but it happens every day in America. It's illegal. Robbery is illegal. It happens every day in America, Charlton. Crimes against other human beings are illegal, but they happen every day. And those bills are signed in the Constitution. It doesn't make them stop, though.
Yeah, but slavery ended, Big C. You got to wake up. Wake up! There was a movie, I think, Radio Raheem, Spike Lee wrote it. It's called Wake Up. And if you ever argue...
What's the minimum wage in America?
But I just want to say, if you're arguing that slavery still exists...
I'm not arguing. I just want to ask you that question to get an answer. What's the federal minimum wage in America?
I know in California they moved it up to $15. But that's not the point. I don't care if the minimum wage is $2. I know there's 13 Jim Crow states, but you can't have credibility and argue that the 13th Amendment does not exist. I mean, that's just a fact, Big C. I want to close out before we close out. I know they use athletes to do a lot of things. Pittsburgh Steelers, Zach Banner, has an emotional video. It's about let's lift each other up. And we all got to do that. And you and I don't have to agree on everything. But at one point in time, if we all look at a stop sign, and that stop sign is called the 13th Amendment, and some people don't see a stop sign, they see go, then you're going to have a collision. The stop sign, it says stop, just like the 13th Amendment says stop.
Have you ever ran a stop sign in your life?
But it had to be there to run it, Big C.
But see, you won't answer the question. It's simple, yes or no.
No, I'm going to say no. I've never run a stop sign in my life. But I've seen them.
You never ran a stop sign?
I've never have, but I've seen them.
There's many other people who have, haven't they?
I'm sure they have been.
Okay, so that means that they don't abide by the law.
But your point doesn't make any sense. If the stop sign did not exist, that's what you're saying. It doesn't exist. The stop sign exists just like the 13th Amendment exists. But we only have a few more minutes. We could always talk about California wine in Southern Moonshine. It's all fair and love and war. The NCAA, we opened up talking about Friday Night Lights and how Texas is saying no football in a state where football means a lot. California saying they're going to decide by the 20th of July. This is also big news, came out today. The Big Ten and the ACC, they will cancel all non-conference games for the 2020 season, not just football, but also basketball and volleyball as well. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that is the cutback on travel when you look at that, and also bringing in some of those schools that they were giving a great payday to potentially come in and take a butt whooping, Charlton. But
yeah.
As you look at it, that's also what they did is a prelude to canceling the season.
Yeah.
The following suit with what happened in the Ivy League. You have to start somewhere when you're the big boys, and when you have a smaller conference setting the table, it's almost like a sense of pride that you've been slapped in the face because they understood or understand more about the cost and factor of the human life versus missing a sports season.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. There'll be more that make the announcement. We talked about that yesterday. UFC fighter, his name is Nick Perry. He uses a word that a lot of people don't want to use anymore, Big Z, as he punched a man, an African-American man in Texas. Isn't that where they stop football for high school? But they don't stop slapping and punching people, Big Z. Your thoughts?
Well, he used the term Negro in a derogatory way, Charlton, as he punched a black man in Texas.
Yeah.
When you think about white society, and they understand the most denigrating thing that you could say to a black person is use the Negro word in a derogatory way. And it's still used in America. You talk about the 13th Amendment, that people are free.
Yeah.
We're never free from that racial epithet, Charlton, that people use to denigrate us as a culture all the time. That is their go-to. It's like a pitcher, a relief pitcher in Major League Baseball. He has a go-to pitch that everybody has a hard time hitting. And that's the same thing with white society in America. Their go-to word is the Negro in a derogatory way towards black people, and to always let them know that we don't accept you from equality perspective.
Yeah, it's a shame that it still happens, but we do a lot of things to hurt ourselves as a group too, Big Z. And speaking of smacking people, and we talked about ownership and how when Roger Goodell, who says, thanks for the $44 million that I get for working for the owners for you guys, the guys that don't believe in you. But Dana White, he took a lot of arrows, as he said, in his own words, Big C. UFC 251 Fight Night in Dubai, of all places. They have Usman versus Masvidal, and it should be a good fight. But when you think about record-wise, it should be a win for Usman. Masvidal started fighting in the backyard like Kimbo Slice did back in the day. It's going to be on the island in the beautiful area of Dubai, Big C. This is one of the UFC fights. I won't pay for it because I know a lot of people that will, Big C, but it's something I would like to see. Your thoughts?
I'll take Masvidal for that fight and to end in the first round also. But, back to that statement you made a moment ago, it's like we do a lot to hurt ourselves also. You think about it. If you get into an argument with your spouse and you raise your voice, you don't let it go any further. But if somebody from the outside came in and raised their voice at your spouse, you're going to look at that totally different. So you can't compare the two things about what a culture does versus an outside culture does to somebody.
Well, I can compare how I felt when people that I know called me that name and people who I didn't know called me that name. Some same color, some different color. My heart felt painful both ways, but everybody has their own opinions about that. I do want to ask you this, though, because as you know, just like race, people have different skin complexions, people have different religions, and I know this is almost like they're going to go forward just so they can say we did the best we could to get the money from the TV networks, and if it's shut down, they want it to be shut down by the governors. But the NFL says that players are banned from exchanging jerseys after a game, after they sweated and bled and spat upon each other and tackled each other for about 3 hours, Big C. And then, in the locker room, you're supposed to be 6 feet apart. I don't know how they're going to pull that off, but what is it about you can't wear or exchange jerseys, but you can sweat, bleed, and spit on each other for 3 hours, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, periodically anybody will make a stupid statement that makes it seem like buffoon. And when you think about that you spent 3 hours in Mortal Kombat with somebody where you breathed, spat, sweated, laid on top of each other, laid underneath each other, Charlton, hugged each other, spit, high-fived, and all these other things.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing in a 10-minute exchange after a game where all you're doing is, passing back and forth some clothing that will most likely introduce you to COVID more so than that competition that you went through.
Yeah.
I think the NFL right now is just stumbling and scrambling for anything that they can say. They're letting people know, they're setting people up to say we're most likely not going to play this season.
Yeah, it's like they just keep adding to, I guess they want to take away the preseason. They wanted to have 2 games. Now they're talking about taking away all games. It's all fair and love and war. Not that this matters. Tiger Woods will return to the Memorial Tournament, golf tournament next week. I guess Tiger about a billionaire too, Big C. A couple of golfers tested positive COVID-19. I guess he can always self-isolate because he has a pretty good-sized yacht. But again, it seems to me that I've always heard this derogatory term when I was growing up. Oh, you're just a dumb jock. I mean, people couldn't say that to me because I'd ask them to spell it first and then I'd talk to them about some things. But it seems like the term dumb jock might be applicable to a lot of people. State of Texas canceling high school football. I think the Ivy League canceled the fall sports. And, of course, people are going to play because they have the money. But Tiger doesn't really need the money. He can wait another year, but he's going to come back. It's going to drive TV ratings, but it really doesn't benefit him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think Tiger's less of a dumb jock than the NBA players are being dumb jock, the NFL players are being dumb jock, and the baseball players are being dumb jock. You want to talk about people being dumb jocks. Those are the personification of dumb jocks. What Tiger does in social distancing playing golf is we saw it a couple of months ago when the 4 of them went out and played Brady, Manning, and Nicholson.
Yeah.
They practice social distancing, which you can do on the golf course. The dumb jocks who play basketball, football, and baseball, they can't practice social distancing. So Tiger's not the dumb jock. It's the team sports guys that are the dumb jocks.
Yeah, and I never called them the dumb jock. I said that athletes were called dumb jocks, and also that was even called to myself when I was growing up. You guys just want to be a bunch of dumb jocks. No, it wasn't me. But I understand Tiger's social distancing, and he may have a jock full of money. As some of these guys just going to have sweat in their jocks. Amazon to pull Washington Redskins merchandising until the team changes the name. As you said, Daniel Snyder just getting more publicity. Nothing wrong with that. He'll do what he has to do. Beijing, China. In Beijing, China, Big C, all international sporting events have been put on the Big C pause until 2021. And they also had on schedule they were going to do a golf tournament called the HSBC Champions World Golf Championship event. And that was going to be in Shanghai for the LPGA. But even in China, they're putting things on the pause. As POTUS said, let's get back in class, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, there's another wave of virus breaking out in China right now, so they have no choice but to shut down the country and try to keep as many of its citizens healthy. You know, the total opposite of what the U.S. is doing right now. The U.S. is talking about rolling out, opening up everything, and people getting back to normalcy. I don't know if, the Republican Party understands or even POTUS understands. He had a rally a couple of weeks ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And they had a real hike in COVID-positive cases in Oklahoma just this past week. Over 600 positive cases, Charlton, of people who attended his rally there at that arena. So 10% of the people who went to that rally ended up positive.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was watching some news, and I believe in Florida, in the state of Florida, he hasn't been to Mar-a-Lago lately. Have you noticed? It's conspicuously absent. I guess Air Force One doesn't fly to Mar-a-Lago. They're saying Florida's up 1,000%, which is just incredible when you deal with people who work in the medical field. But people will do what they got to do. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. Big C, final story, Major League Baseball, they're looking at the weather effect. I don't know why they're looking at weather effect with COVID-19, but in Chicago, they're talking about how the wind blows out of Wrigley Field. Also, the breeze was a little bit different in San Francisco coming out of Oracle Ballpark, and also with the heat in Los Angeles, Chavez Ravine. But they're saying weather's important. It's important in the baseball business because it's the kind of business that still decides kind of the weather metrics going into a game. I guess that's for betting. Who cares if it's rain or cold or not when it comes to a baseball? You can either hit the ball or you can't, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you're looking at the weather concerning COVID-19, I believe when the president made his first statement about COVID in March, saying as soon as the weather turns warm,
That's right.
it's just going to disappear. It's going to go away like a miracle. So
Yep.
I think it's warm in most of the United States right now, Charlton. I know down in Florida, Arizona, places like that, California, Texas, where temperatures have crested 100 degrees and higher, Charlton.
Yeah.
And this pandemic seems to be catching fire as the warmer the weather gets. So heat has been an ally to this COVID-19, Charlton, that has made this pandemic even more and more horrific. So if they're talking about weather and looking at weather patterns, then maybe you need to just stay inside, don't start up the season.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense, Big C, but everybody do what they got to do. I love talking about high school football. I don't want to miss Friday Night Lights, but hey, I got to do what science says. I know a lot of colleges, the Big Ten, the ACC getting on board with the Ivy League, and we'll see if the Pac-12 is next. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, once again, I want to thank those first responders, Charlton, the nurses, doctors, and first responders in the healthcare field for working admirably every day trying to keep America safe, Charlton. And I also want to nominate the Ivy League for the Nobel Peace Prize in Medicine, Charlton, for canceling fall sports and keeping all those athletes safe.
Big C, that would be a very good nomination. You can get nominated too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.